Hi, and welcome to the 18th episode of the Running with Kelly podcast. It's been a minute, as the kids say, since our last episode, but I'm really excited to have some return guests on with us today. Back on episode 13, we talked about mental health. If you haven't seen it yet, I suggest you go back and take a look. We had Samantha Hancy on. She has her master's in clinical mental health counseling, and she gave us lots of tips in regards to mental health and running. And then on episode 14, we had Nick Budinski on. He has his master's in art therapy and was a collegiate cross-country runner and has now run, I think, maybe is it 6 marathons?
Six, yeah.
6 marathons, one
Yep.
Boston qualifying timed marathon. In training and working with Nick, there are definitely some mental roadblocks, I would say. And I think he will benefit very much from having a conversation with Samantha, as she might give him some tools and tricks of the trade. And I'm excited to hear to listen in on this conversation. So I'm going to kind of be quiet. If I could just completely go off the screen, I would. So I don't know if Nick, you want to start us off first and talk about some of this. So this is kind of like a live case study, and I'm super excited. So take it away, guys.
All right. So I guess I'll just start by saying some of the things that I've always struggled with are definitely more the mental aspect of this running. When it comes to the marathon, I think I always kind of hit a point where, that pain starts to kick in and I'm kind of just like, okay, it's mile 18. I still have 8 more miles to go. This hurts a lot now. I'm not having fun anymore. And, even just the littlest bit of doubt in my mind suddenly starts to snowball into this, giant avalanche of self-doubt and just misery and negative self-talk. And it's just, that's one thing that I think is always what does me in when it comes to the marathon. I have the fitness, I have the speed, I know exactly what I bring to the table when I come to the starting line, but then it's like there's always that uncertainty of when I'm going to hit the wall, of the pain, how bad it's going to feel, and that kind of just really does me in, I think. And it's not even just the marathon, it could be any race. There's always that point where I dread. There's that point where I feel like I can't go any further, and I think I just go into every race assuming that's going to happen at some point, and I almost look for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. Well, first of all, you are not alone in that feeling. I think that you've probably been told that 100,000s of times.
Absolutely.
Running and sport in general is a really mental game. And I think that that's coming more to fruition in the last few years. Running has become a really popular sport. And I think that's thanks to COVID, because it was something that people could just go and do. And so I see it all over my social media. People just talking about, hey, come along with me as I run 10 miles, but also I run a 13-minute mile pace, and allowing people that maybe never saw themselves as runners before, thinking like, oh my gosh, that's so slow. Now they can see themselves fitting into this community that is accepting of no one cares what your time is, right?
Right.
So it's become this awesome community, but I think that myself, when I was playing lacrosse at Niagara University, it was a big mental game. And we see this a lot with people in the professional capacity too, when they get what they call the yips. So this is something that, like, kickers and football, they will make every single kick, field goal, whatever it is. And then on their 101, they miss it. And then the next few, they continue to miss it and they miss it. And that's exactly what you said. It's that snowball. You get in your head and you can't pull yourself out. That's the same thing that it sounds like is happening for you. My first question, I guess, is, it sounds like from what you were explaining that prior to going into the race, you already start to have some of that self-doubt and negative self-talk. Is there ever a point in the run that you find yourself being like, I got this, like at a certain mile, I heard like around mile 18 is when you're like, this sucks, because
Yeah.
we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Is there ever a point in a run, maybe it's not even on race day,
Yeah.
maybe it's in training, where you really find yourself being really confident in yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, that's a tough question. I feel like kind of looking back at the past few races or even the runs that I've done, it's kind of like all over the place, really. Um, I feel like definitely once I get a couple miles in, once I get that rhythm, once I've warmed up, I definitely feel very much confident on myself. I feel like I'm feeling good still, I'm feeling like I could maybe hold this pace a little bit longer, or, maybe I could, if what I tell myself a lot is like, oh, well, if I hold this pace to like, maybe if it's a marathon, like through mile 14, that'll be good. I could be okay with that. But really, in reality, I want to hold that pace as long as I can.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, that self-doubt or that self-talk, it's like I'm almost already planning my demise.
Yes. So what happens around mile 14, right? You say, you know what, I'll hold this pace until mile 14.
Yeah.
When you get to are you checking a watch, or are you looking at like on race day? Obviously, you're past the flags that say like mile 20 or whatever it is.
Right, right.
Are you looking at a watch?
So usually I do look at my watch every time the mile goes off.
Okay.
I'm just looking at it mostly to look at where my pace is. For
Yep.
the marathon, I'm really very much focused on what pace I need to hit this time goal. So I would say the only race I'm really looking at my watch is the marathon. So I'm looking at it every mile to make sure I'm still on pace. And then, I would say maybe once I hit 13, maybe that like weird transition point between 13 to 18, that gap of 5 miles there, that's when it starts to waver a little bit. If I see even a little bit of myself coming off pace, that's, a huge thing too. And that's a big mental thing.
Yeah.
With my most recent marathon that I did last fall, it was definitely mile 18 where I broke down. I was feeling really, really good up until about mile 16, 17. And then it was just something from 17 to 18 where I started to feel that pain. And then I saw that the time dipped at that point. And I was like, okay, this is, where I'm going to start to fall off.
Yeah. Yeah. What would it be like to not wear a watch when you run? What would it be like? I've never done it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like times are really critical. And I'm not saying like every run, because time is really, really important for you, because you are really working towards a specific goal and a qualifying at the end of the day. So you do need to like pace yourself and recognize, okay, I'm slipping, I need to get back up there. But I wonder what it's like for you to not check your watch and just get into that muscle memory of, and I was talking about this last Tuesday. I was I just fall into this pace, and then I end up looking down and I'm like 8:25. It's always at 8:25.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that would be like, even on a short run, like a 5K.
Yeah.
Just go out and be like, I wonder what that would be like for you to not check the watch.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've definitely become so used to just having it, whether it be checking mileage or checking the time.
Yeah.
That is definitely something that would be, I feel like, a little terrifying at first, just to kind of feel like almost like I was naked, right? Like to be completely free. But it's really funny because back when I was in college and even in high school, like when I was running, I never looked at a watch. I never wore a watch. Even in the races, everyone else was checking their times every mile, and I just didn't wear a watch. I wanted to run strictly off of feel. And now it's like the reverse has happened to me. It's like I've done a 180 entirely, and it's like I need to know where I'm at all times.
Yeah. And I wonder where that comes from, truly like wanting to always know where we're at. I should probably take my own advice, but I'm like, I need credit for this, right? Like I need credit for the race, and I need to be able to go back and be like, okay, what was my times here?
Right.
Data driven at the end of the day. We love having that data that our watch provides for us.
Right.
But yeah, I wonder what it would be like to not check your times and to go back to like, hey, I'm just running today.
Yeah.
I think when do you, in a race, let's say you're not trying to meet a certain time, do you run for like fun, like a race for fun?
I haven't used fun and run in a sentence in a really long time. It feels like
that may be, Nick.
Yeah.
That may be where we start.
Yeah. Because I've gotten so used to like I'm I'm not like a big competitive runner by any means. I always find myself maybe towards the front of the pack, but I might win a race here and there, but there's always someone else I'm competing against. So I feel like and just because I've been running these races for so long now, it's like I feel like anytime I do a race, I have to be there to compete. I have to give it my all. I need to try to beat that person in front of me, regardless of who they are. And, that's kind of where the fun I feel like has been sucked out of it, because now that's a whole nother layer of anxiety, that competition of who could be here, who's going to challenge me today, can I beat this person, I beat them the last time, are they going to beat me this time, kind of thing. Even with the days when I say like, okay, like this is just a turkey trot, like I'm just going to have fun, I still get there and I still run as hard as I can, and it's like I'm not just doing this casually anymore.
Yes, and I totally resonate with that. Definitely. I resonate with that in a lot of aspects, because I am not a competitive runner, but I'm a competitive person. And so because of that, I find myself, and I always tell people, they're like, okay, what's your like race day tips? And I'm like, don't start in the front.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen is you're gonna start in the front, then people are gonna start passing you.
Yeah.
Pass people, and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so I find myself like towards the back, because then I'll start to pass people, and mentally that's what I need.
Yeah.
People start passing. That's what I found in my longer runs and marathons, is if people start passing me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm horrible. Like I'm horrible. But I'm not a competitor. I'm not trying to win this by any means.
Right.
But that's just the thoughts that like being competitive and being in sport, like at the collegiate level, has caused us to always want to prove to ourselves, but also to others that like we trained for this, like we're good. I remember just like going out for the first time to play golf, and I was like, I'm gonna be so good at this, is easy. And I was horrible. I was so bad. And I just got frustrated and I was angry. I'm like just randomly hitting the ball. I'm like, I'm horrible. I'm getting down on myself. And people are like, damn, golf is hard. It's not something you just pick up. But being a competitive person, I was like, I have to be the best at this.
Right.
So I took a second, and that's how I came across running, distance running, for example. And I tell people all the time, I don't want to make it a task, a chore. I have to do this. I have to reach these certain times. I want to. I set goals for myself. But when it comes to setting those standards that I know I might be able to reach and blow out of the park, I don't want to set those for myself, because I don't want to set myself up for failure.
Right. Yeah.
This situation is different because you're trying to meet a qualifying time.
Right.
So there's a time, and we have to meet it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's way easier said than done.
Right.
Where I find myself looking towards now in running is the imagery and the grounding techniques. Is this something that you have ever tried in running? A grounding technique, mindfulness prior to race and mindfulness during race? What has that looked like for you?
It's kind of funny that you bring up mindfulness, because when I was going for my master's in art therapy, we had to do a thesis, and my thesis was, how can mindfulness affect college level athletes? And it was never really something that we got to conduct in a full experiment, myself and my partner, on this thesis, but we always, thought this would be a really useful tool for people to maybe sit down and do some sort of creative expression before the race. And, I was like, that's such a great idea. And then I never did it myself. So it's like, I know it's probably a very useful technique to use. I've just never utilized it for my own running.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring that up. I've never thought of it in the creative arts aspect of it, but totally. That is something that, especially for people who are creative and have that side of them, that could be a really great outlet to here, get this all out. Let's get all of this. And maybe you like paint or color, whatever it is, the anxiety that you feel. Now you're going to get that out on the paper.
Right.
That's going, and then I'm going to leave that at home, right?
Hmm.
Now I'm taking that and I'm putting it on the paper. You can even
Hmm.
rip it up,
Yeah.
right? Like that feeling of like journaling that we talk about when you journal something and then you rip it all up, and it's
Hmm.
that feeling of release,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so I find that could be that could be something that could be
Yeah.
really
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
powerful.
Yeah.
It's just
Hmm.
something to try.
Right. Right.
Um, what I've been really trying to do lately is a grounding technique.
Okay.
Mindfulness prior to sport is not something that I have really practiced too much. When
Hmm.
I was in getting my undergrad, I got that in psych, but I wasn't so focused on like the the mental health mindfulness aspect of
Okay.
just yet. That was more like my master's when I got into that and started to understood what mindfulness was.
Right.
And now we see athletes. I think of the quarterback for Michigan this past season, who every single game prior to the game, he'd walk out on the field without his shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
He would ground himself and practice mindfulness techniques prior to the game. It
Hmm.
started to become mainstream, right? People
Mm.
were like, what is this? What
Hmm.
what are these people doing? They're doing mindfulness, right? It is not something that you're going to be able to do and be great at. And that's what the emphasis that I have for people is that it's going to take practice. You're going
Hmm.
to be like, I look crazy. I feel crazy.
Yeah.
But again, that practice and continuing to just grab onto it and
Yeah.
right and give it 100%. It's not something that I've entirely practiced, so I
Hmm.
can't speak to it, but I know athletes have had great success with it. And in on episode 13, I talked a lot about like injury prevention and then
Mm.
post-injury recovery for
Hmm.
mindfulness as well.
Okay.
In just how mindfulness has been it's been prescribed really to people when they're in recovery, not only from
Hmm.
injury from sport or injury in general, but for certain diseases
Mm-hmm.
to recover faster.
Okay.
So mindfulness has lots of good techniques. And if you were to look up like mindfulness techniques, you can find so many different ones. Find the one that works for you.
Right. Yeah.
For example, for me, I cannot just sit here with my thoughts and be mindful. I need guided meditation. So
Okay.
I prefer body scan meditation. So it
Okay.
walks you through a body scan,
Hmm.
something that you could do prior to a race. It could be quick. It could be as quick as you want it to be, anywhere from
Okay.
1 minute to 30 minutes or more, right? You
Yeah.
can choose the time, which is great in these aspects, right? You don't always want something that's going to take a long time,
Right.
but to get in the right mental headspace sounds like it could be really beneficial to you.
Hmm.
What I like to do and what I've been really practicing and what I wish I could do a whole research project on is is tapping, and not tapping, and for anybody that's watching, not tapping as a form of counseling or therapy. So oftentimes there is a therapeutic approach called tapping where you like tap your collarbones and tap other places of your body to as a form of therapy. What I mean when I say tapping is I talk about tapping my fingers together to create not only a grounding technique for myself, but I'm engaging at least two senses. So it's touch, but I'm also repeating something in my head. So what
Mm.
I found helpful is I just say when I'm tapping my fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I continue that for, if I look at my watch, I'll continue that for either a certain amount of time, a certain distance, or just until it feels right. And I found myself really improving my pace
Okay.
without even knowing it. Like I'm
Yeah.
not trying to,
Yeah.
but I feel your pain when you were saying you hit that wall.
Yep.
It's like your lungs can take it, but
Yeah.
my hips, my
Yeah.
shins, my knees,
Absolutely.
they're sore, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's in those moments that I immediately turn to the tapping and I'm like, one,
Okay.
2, 3, 4. And I say it in my head,
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I just continue that. And it takes my mind off of the pain because now my mind has to think about, oh, this is something that takes a little bit of brain power, right? It's a pattern.
Right.
Also saying the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Your brain is now having to think about something else except for the negative talk.
Right.
Now you're saying something other than this sucks, this sucks, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and your body is now grounding itself.
Okay.
There's other ways you can do this too. Repeating the same phrase, repeating the same word, can go along with some mindfulness. But that's what I've really kind of been grabbing onto this season of
Mm-hmm.
running as I prepare for my marathon is looking into that and how that's been really beneficial to me. And I
Okay.
found it personally to be really helpful. I wish I could get a case study on this and get like a whole running team and see, you know, a tapping group versus a not tapping group.
Yeah,
and
right,
see what
right.
their times are to see if I could get some research on this. But right now it's just me, myself, and I. And I found it to be really helpful for those exact reasons.
Yeah.
You're tricking your brain into thinking about something other than I hurt.
Yeah.
Where's the finish line?
Right.
I'm done. My time sucks right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you just run.
Right.
So that's been really, really helpful for me
Okay.
because I do find myself in similar positions. Today, for example, I was like, okay, I want to run 6 miles, but then I got around 5 and I'm like, 5's enough, right? Like, or I got to like 2.5 because I was turning back.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, now this 5 will be enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, Sam, you said you're doing 6.
Yeah.
But around that like 2.5, I'm like, just turn around. This is enough for the day,
Yeah.
right? And I ended up running 7.
Oh,
so it
there
just
you go.
because I was tapping and I just
Yeah.
on my head, I stopped looking at the watch for a half a second, and I started to trick my mind and think about something else, and that's really been a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely something I'd be interested in trying. You know, at this point, it's like I'm open to any and all suggestions. So, you know, if you're saying that's something that works, then yeah, I'm gonna see about trying it myself. Because yeah, anything that can kind of get me out of that negative cycle of, you know, self-talk there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And trying out that that a mindfulness activity prior to running.
Yeah.
Whether that is before, and I would practice that obviously before race day. Like I said, it's not something that's just going to like come
Right.
that day and it's gonna be beautiful.
Right.
That would be awesome. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. So like practicing that, and that could look like writing down all of your doubt, right? In a journal. And it could be like I feel statements, or it could be just statements that come to mind, that negative self-talk, and writing those statements in the journal and then crumpling it up and throwing in the garbage, ripping it up, or artistically maybe expressing that in a different way. Not necessarily just writing, but like, this is what my anxiety feels like, and now I'm getting it out on the paper, or whatever that could look like. And maybe you keep it, or maybe you rip it up and you throw it away too. And at the end of the race season, maybe you have this beautiful collage of you're like, here's all the anxieties in my it'd be something really beautiful, actually.
You know.
But yeah, those are like my 2 things that I would say for you is to like practice that mindfulness prior. And that could either look like a guided meditation or any type of mindfulness, really. Breath work. I don't know if I told you how to take a nice clinical deep breath, but I always tell this to my the people that I teach, is that you want your exhale to always be longer than your inhale, and you want to belly breathe. So that means that your belly should be rising and not your chest. And what this does is it pushes your diaphragm down along a nerve that runs below your diaphragm, and it sends a signal immediately to your brain of like calm. So belly breathing, I will always put my hands like on my stomach and let that stomach rise. They say that that's really helpful for runners when they get like that side stitch, that pain that's in your side, to like breathe through your diaphragm because it hits the nerve. So it's similar kind of sensation. So you can kind of recognize that as far as like when you get that side stitch, that's that pain that's really annoying. You want to like push down on the diaphragm. That's why you want to belly breathe. It can get rid of it a lot faster. So those are like my 2 tips for a clinical deep breath to bring that blood pressure down. And yeah, really, really see how that affects you.
Okay.
It is so mental. It really,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it
like
really is.
half the battle.
Yeah.
You can be so ready, but that mental side is unfortunately a big, big component.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's 90% of,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
race. It's all mental,
Yep.
I wonder sometimes, like, would I feel as bad if I didn't let myself slip into that negative self-talk, or if I just had better mental strategies to, keep myself going. I
Yeah.
wonder how much of the mental side actually affects the race compared to, like, okay, or is my legs just completely, like, are they just spent,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And when we get into those moments, like you start to have negative self-talk during the race, right?
Yeah.
That's not something we like entirely covered in this past conversation. And I'm being mindful of time, Kelly, I promise. Is that like telling yourself come back, like literally like come back.
Yeah.
And that's also a mindfulness technique as well. And replacing that with it could be a repetitive word. You could just completely say the same word over and over again. It could be a phrase that you find really powerful.
Okay.
Maybe it's from your favorite movie. Like, I think of the movie Unbroken is one of the movies that I really like. A moment of pain is worth a lifetime of glory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a phrase that always kind of comes to my mind, especially when that like pain comes around. But I the phrase that I always say is just keep running, just keep running. And I just say that over and over again. And be 90 degrees outside. I'm so done. I'm dehydrated. I ran out of water. And I'm just like, just keep running. And then and also allowing yourself grace too.
Yeah.
Is that, you know what, this moment does not define who I am as a runner. This time does not define who I am as a runner. I will come back from this and recognizing, maybe you didn't make that time. How are you going to handle that post race? What is the mental side of things going to be for that? That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Conversation. But those would definitely be the top things I would.
All right. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into doing some of that stuff. I think I've always been big into writing as well, so I like the idea of making the list. These are my feelings, and whether or not I destroy it or keep it or reflect on it later. I definitely think that would be something I'm curious in trying and seeing. I'm really just curious about like what my mind would even say in that moment, because I've never really considered like, okay, why am I feeling anxious? What is the worst that could happen from running this race? So I'm curious in exploring that. I like that idea, and the tapping too. I thought that was a really good.
Yeah, there's some apps too.
Okay.
I think it's called the Clarity app.
Okay.
I think. And what that does is it allows you, it has prompts for you. So it'll say, like write down what you're feeling, and then it'll come up with a prompt like, it follows like a CBT type of a therapy, which is just like overall the one that comes to mind for most types of mental health is like CBT for anxiety, depression, all of them. So that's an app that could be really helpful as far as that, exactly what you're saying, that those negative self-talk that you're having. It may be helpful to just flip the script.
Right.
And sometimes you can't do that yourself. You need like a journal prompt. You need someone else to tell you,
Yeah.
like, okay, how do I flip the script? Because now I'm scared. I'm just mad or I suck. And you get in that snowball.
Yeah.
You pull yourself out and you need someone else to pull you out. So that can be helpful as well.
All right. Very, very cool. It's, as much as I recognize that the mental side of running is such a huge component, I've never even considered to explore how do we use that to our favor,
For sure.
So, yeah.
I definitely agree. And it's not something that I really looked into either. And then when I was in school, it was something when I was playing lacrosse, I was never like the big stat person, right? I wasn't always the one that was scoring the goals. I wasn't the one, like I wasn't showing up on the stats, but I was the one that was giving 100% effort and like finishing out plays and doing the little things that ultimately led to the big things.
Yeah.
But that was hard for me. It was like the numbers weren't showing it. It took other people being like, this, like in film days, watch this, you're the reason that this happened. So, but yeah, those stats play tricks on us. So yeah, it's allowing ourselves to give ourselves grace.
Yeah.
And then how to bounce back from that.
Right. Well, very cool. Very cool. I'm curious to see where this could go. I'm excited.
Definitely. I'm excited to hear how it works for you, and then like maybe learning together, like, hey, I tried this, it didn't work for me, or I tried this, it did work for me.
Yeah.
And kind of moving forward with that and what that we could expand on it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Cool.
You guys this has been a lot of fun being quiet and sitting on the sidelines. But I just totally, like, I was taking some notes, and I love the pre-run mindfulness activities that you talked about, and to write some stuff down. This is all stuff, by the way, I'm gonna steal. As Nick's coach, I'm thinking it might make its way into the plan. Write your lists out. But to practice that kind of stuff, and the grounding and the tapping, I love that. And I think Sam, with all the Running with Kelly people on Tuesdays, maybe we could get you a group of tappers and a group of non-tappers, and you can do your study.
That would be so cool.
Yes, and that belly breathing, I know will be helpful. I like, you mentioned something like when you hit the wall and you feel like you're going into that negative mindset, to literally tell yourself to come back.
Literally,
When you said that, that really struck me. Just tell yourself to come back, and like even physically thinking of saving yourself from that
from the downfall, from the snowball rolling down the hill, like come back.
Yeah.
Because you're by yourself oftentimes, right, Nick? Like on race day, you're not racing with somebody. That would be like so cool if you had someone that was exactly your same pace. Exactly.
Right.
We don't always get that.
Right,
and so we have to figure out how we're gonna pull ourselves out of it.
Right.
And it can be really hard.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting too, because in this last marathon I did, I was running with a group of people, and then a lot of the pain started when they started to pull away too. So it was like, that's when I was on my own, no one else to save me. So, I was just out there alone.
Yeah. Isolating. Isolation.
Yeah.
I do love that movie Unbroken, by the way. I read the book.
It's one of my favorites, actually.
And watched the movie. I don't know, Nick, I keep giving you stuff to read and watch, but if you haven't seen it,
it's a true story based on an Olympian runner
who went to war. It's from World War II, I think, and he was he was a
prisoner of war.
And just what he withstood, what he was able to withstand all of that abuse because of the running, I think, that he had done. But anyway, I highly recommend, and we can double check on that app, Sam, and if we know for sure what it is, we can put it in the comment section under the podcast. Let's see, maybe we can touch base. I know, Nick, your race is 4 weeks from this Saturday.
Yeah, 1 month from today, exactly. We're in the final month here, so coming up quick.
Wow. We have like 2 minutes left. You want to tell us in like 30 seconds about the race coming up?
Sure. So I am running the Carmel Marathon in Indiana, and this will be my first marathon in about 6 months. First one, I guess, attempting to requalify for Boston, since I qualified last year, didn't get in, and now it's kind of like a redemption cycle, so see where this goes.
What's the qualifying time for you?
3 hours.
3 hours.
Yep. So I had just ran in October. I ran 3 hours 40 seconds, and that was the one where I hit the wall at 18 miles, and just barely was able to hang on to that pace. And even just, I know I wouldn't have gotten in if I had gone just that little bit under 3 flat, but I think just knowing that I didn't break 3 hours that time was another just little jab,
Yeah.
So this has been a big journey for me. I've been dealing a lot with like just, trying to get back out of the slump, that kind of really just put me in this rut for a little bit. And I'm trying to crawl my way back. So these mental strategies are definitely going to be something I try out and see what works.
Awesome.
It would be super cool. I don't know if we can, it's so hard for us to get our schedules coordinated, but if we could touch base for like 15 minutes even in maybe 2 weeks, see
Yeah.
how those couple of things, if you try them
Yeah.
and see how they go. I don't know. We'll see what we can do with coordinating, or just have you come back to one of our runs, Sam.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to come yesterday. Of course, it was so beautiful out too.
That's very nice.
And then I had dinner plans with family last minute, and I was like, dang it.
Well,
But I'm planning to come next Tuesday.
I was gonna say you're always welcome to come. I heard it's gonna snow next Tuesday, but that's okay.
Oh, great.
We can run in the parking
It's
lot.
a mental thing, running in
It's a
weather.
mental thing,
Yep.
exactly. Well, thank you guys again, and thank you all for listening to this episode. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you have any comments or questions, you can put them in the comments area, and I'm sure we can pass them along to Sam or Nick if you want them to respond to anything. And we will have another show in a couple of weeks. Happy running.
Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.